Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lovers Family on Lovers Podcast Show, and today I'm going to be reacting to Joshua Maponga on his interview at Denny J Show. I listened to the whole story. It's a long conversation with Joshua Maponga. So those who do not know Joshua Maponga, you will get a chance to listen to an introduction of who Joshua Maponga is. But of interest, there are various streams of conversations that came out in this show, and I'm going to pick one by one. I'm going to dissect it one by one. I'm going to pick up and make them short and shorten the stories in this conversation for your understanding various and quite interesting issues addressed in this Denny J show. And it just caught my attention, and it triggered a lot of questions within me, and I'm sure many out there are left with a lot of questions that remained unanswered or probably answered by Joshua Maponga. And it's a man that I respect a lot, and I've been following him closely, and his teachings are quite rich, very, very, very rich. If you're an African, you will understand and appreciate what Joshua Maponga is doing or stands for, or the message is trying to cut across the divide, so that the younger generation, the middle generation, the older generation will be able to appreciate and understand. So, Joshua Maponga, without further ado, let's dig, let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Zimbabwean-born African legend, a popular public speaker, author, philosopher, leader, musician, social entrepreneur, a proud son of the soil. Ladies and gentlemen, Joshua Marara Maponga. Magadi Elder. Amanonipa Mitupo kamaja.
Shoko.
Magadi ko shoko.
Kwera miti.
Kwera miti.
Garamboko. Garamashamba uda. Chirana wana wanji.
Shoko is my mom's totem, so ndisekuru wangu awa Joshua Maponga. And just listen closely to the whole start of the conversation, and he went further to dissect, the totems in the African context, and that shows how Africa is one and should be one. If Africa is not united, it's a great question that we need to ask ourselves. Why? What happened for the African continent to be so much divided, and yet we should be one people? And these are the questions. Like I said, we have a lot of questions to ask, and we need clarity and the answers to these questions. Otherwise, we'll be a lost generation. The younger generation will be even lost more and further divided, drifted apart from each other. So let's listen closely.
Makumu mwana ngesindiwe shano. Wakaramba ugeza.
Okay.
Anamshamba negore. Anampona ngokuba. Zigwe zitedza zinobwigwa nana manga. Warpedo antambana so. Mtambo ruparo ware. Wiremiti ya sosi.
Why are you making me look bad? I couldn't even do more than 2 lines of my own totem.
It's your problem.
Thank you very much for making time. I know you're a very busy man.
Thank you.
And I know after this you need to travel, but you made sure that you came through for your young brother. So we have this interview. Much appreciated. So since we don't have a lot of time, I'm going to dig straight into it. Where do I start? I think background is important. A lot of I know you've been in lots of places speaking about the African philosophy, and you've appeared on many shows, many platforms, conferences, and so on. Let's start off with you were in South Africa and you moved back recently, I believe.
For the sake of those who consume lots of public media sensations, there was a whole lot of talking around me being deported from South Africa and coming back to Zimbabwe. It's not true.
Right.
My family is in Johannesburg.
Right.
And I was there yesterday.
Right. Yeah, I noticed soon after they started talking, I saw you were appearing on some shows in South Africa.
And I'm a regular citizen of Zimbabwe and a permanent resident in South Africa.
Right.
And so maybe just to get that out of the way.
Right.
With the sensation that other people want to develop around it. You know, people consume lots of garbage.
Right.
But no one bothers to find facts. I am a legal citizen of Africa, and Zimbabwe is a province in Africa. South Africa is a province. Zambia, Gambia, those are provinces. But we are on one solid block of land.
Right.
And no African must be made to feel like a foreigner anywhere on the African continent. And the faster we wean ourselves off the...
No African should feel like a foreigner in any part of the African continent. That's quite an interesting statement, and it's a big statement. But is that true? Are we welcomed in every part of an African soil? Are we really welcome? Of course, we have geographical boundaries, and these geographical boundaries you cannot cross freely into any African country without producing a passport, which is a key and important document for identification. But others went further to wanting a visa. You cannot cross to some other African countries without a visa. You need to have an extra document called a visa to be able to cross to the other part of the African continent or country, African country rather. And in terms of trade, these have provided or necessitated a lot of restrictions in terms of business, in terms of relationships, in terms of making Africa a one country or a global continent for every African nationality to have access and do business and do tourism and operate in general. Oh, okay. That's another story for another day. Let's get it rolling. Let's continue to listen to Elder Maponga.
Rest of colonialism that separates us from each other, we may quickly discover we are one people. The Shumbas in Zimbabwe, which is the lion, Vanamramki, Vana Sipambi, ndimi vana Banda kuMalawi, ndimi vana Mutaung, Tau in South Africa, Ngonyama. So which part of it could be confusing for you to find that your clan lineages are not limited to the Zimbabwean hegemony of how different I am to you? The question must be, how similar
are we?
Am I to you? And my grandfather on my mother's side is a Shumba. My grandmother on my mother's side, Ndwana Dziva, Wana Mlambo, Wana Mbedzi. My grandmother on my father's side, Ndwana Tembo, Manjenjenje, Chiyongo Chawasikana, Ndova Nambonambi in South Africa, Tembo in Malawi.
Now I'm asking myself some questions, which, okay, on my mom's side, what was the totem of my mom's dad, who happens to be my grandfather? I don't even know. I'm thinking as well, what totem did my mom's mom had? Well, for my dad, it's Soko, okay? Because my mom, I know, her totem was Soko. And so I understand now my dad's totem, my granddad from my mom's totem was Soko, but my mom's, I don't know. And my dad, of course, is Nzo Samanyanga. That's my totem. And obviously, that will be the totem of my grandfather. But my mom should be Mof, because I know Sekuru Mof. My grandmom from my father should be Mof. Yeah, I have to verify those facts. But anyway, it's a combination of everything. This is the history and the information just we need to know, and we have lost that as Africans, and we need to ask the questions.
Then finally vana baba vanobereka ini ndo vanamukanya vanasvosve vana pfudzi chena. And I think immediately we remove the colonial Berlin Conference limitations, where a group of white boys sat on a table and took a ruler to draw boundaries. And now we wake up in the 21st century to discover that our grandmothers are across the river. Some of those lines literally cut through the dining room. And all of a sudden, to go to the kitchen, you need a passport. To go to the toilet, you need a passport. But this, I've never understood how 54 African presidents can fail to undo what 5, 10, or 15 white boys did in Berlin.
Is it not also a question of power? We have 54 leaders. So if we take away the borders, we now need one leader.
Power is one thing, control is another thing. We have people that are in power, but that aren't in control.
Okay.
You could be sitting as a president, and it's a title.
Right.
But the question is, do you have access to economic? Do you have access to culture? Do you have access to the resources? Do you have access to land, which makes you a powerful leader? So many of what we call powerful African leaders are actually puppets in the colonial hand to manage, to control, to maintain a colonial narrative. And the African child needs to look past democracy, past constitution, and see themselves right at the back before they were colonized and say, who were we? Because we cannot be sitting here in the 21st century and define ourselves in the language of those that colonized us. We can't do that. It's not all Chirungu. Yes, we speak English. And some of us can even speak it better than the English people themselves. But that does not define identity. We need to go few steps back, and hence my introduction will be
Wow, that's so deep. English, of course, it's a good language. Mtauro wakanaka. But awufanira kuzoti controller nekudefina. I know kuti vamwe vazhinji tinotofunga kuti kugona kutaura chirungu ndokudzidza. My mom was not educated. She never spoke one English word or sentence, but she was intelligent. Being able to speak good English is not a sign of being educated or being intelligent. Far from it. You might be learned, but you might not be educated. You might not be intelligent. So these are the questions we need to ask ourselves and rediscover who we are. And iyo mitauro iyi ndo yatikanganisa. Mumwe akatotadza akatyora chirungu unonzwa nekusekwa. But ugoona vasingatogoni chirungu chacho neivavo. Most of them are successful people, successful business people, because they were not confined into this colonial agenda of being eloquent in the language and in everything. Far from it. I think these are the questions we need to ask ourselves and re-educate ourselves. Totodzoka to the roots kwatakatangira kune midzi yedu, totangira ikoko, kana kuti togadzirisa zvofanira kugadziriswa mukutaura kwedu, mutauro yedu. Izvo tiri kuEurope, vana vedu chishona chaichona kana kuti mutauro wamai isindebele havachatokwanisa kana kutotaura kana one word. What should we do? And these are the questions we need to ask ourselves. We need to reconfigure and not to lose our identity. We need to track back the roots of who we are as a people.
I am a watcher from the future, living with you in the present with solutions from the past. How do we combine our history and our destiny into transforming our narrative in the present?
Right. I want to dwell a little bit on your history. And then I want us to go to your African philosophy and the gospel according to Joshua Maponga. You were an elder in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, a preacher, a very big person there. And then
I think we'll continue the conversation, or listening and dissecting and having a conversation, particularly on the interviews on this show, Danny J show with Elder Maponga, because there are various streams, like I said, that came out in the conversation, and I'll be looking into many conversations in relation to Joshua Maponga, so that we spread the message, we spread communication is everywhere, to every part of the world, to those people I can reach out to. They can also listen. The younger generation to come can also take this clip and look to the deeper, to the entirety of the conversation that would have taken place, because some might not have gotten the access. So this is the whole essence of this podcast, the Lovers Podcast. And please like and subscribe to this podcast for more. At this point, at this moment, we end here until we meet again in the next episode, unfolding Joshua Maponga knowledge base.